This afternoon I am driving and I'm going to address a question that comes up surprisingly quite a bit with people. They, I guess, just want to know, depends on where they come from, but how are the drivers around Indianapolis? And so this would include Indianapolis, Carmel, Greenwood, basically all of the cities and towns that surround Indianapolis as well too, because everything is pretty interconnected. If you live in any one of those other cities and towns other than Indianapolis, you're probably going to interact with Indianapolis one way or the other, even through some of the side streets or interstates, things like that. Like example here, I'm about ready to get onto I-70 westbound to get over to Indianapolis and on the north side of Indianapolis today for work. So that question is what we're addressing. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Living in Indianapolis. I'm Jason Compton, and I am getting on to I-70 West to go over to Indianapolis and specifically to the north side. So I'm a driver around here, and I guess I drive a certain way, just like everybody else that lives around here drives a certain way. And a lot of people want to know what way that is. So let me start this to answer this question by telling you a story. So quite a few years ago, not quite 20 years ago, but getting pretty close to that now, I took a trip to Argentina and Buenos Aires. That's where we stayed mostly, which is a gigantic city in Argentina in South America. And I went with a couple of friends and we stayed with a family there, which was fantastic because for the most part, they really didn't speak any English. So it was super fun trying to get around, not speaking Spanish very well, and them not speaking English very well or not at all. It was really fun to do. So one person in the family though was my age and still is my age, and one of the friends that I went with, they were exchange students, so they've known each other since high school and stayed friends since then and have visited back and forth since then. But this time I went along, stayed there for a couple of weeks, and of course we traveled around the country a little bit, and it was fairly consistent all over the country, but especially heightened in the big city, Buenos Aires. So attitudes when driving, actual driving around was a lot more aggressive than what you're going to see around Indianapolis or any Midwestern city for the most part, I would say, with some exceptions like Chicago. Chicago's an anomaly in the Midwest for a lot of reasons. Gigantic city, 8 million people. So here's a good example of what I mean by aggression. So we pull up, we're actually in a car, there's a driver. We pull up to a stop sign, there's a car in front of us that's stopped, and it takes a little longer for the car in front of us to get going from the stop sign than usual. So first there was a horn from our driver and then the bump. So he actually pulled forward and bumped into the guy to get him going. That is not something that's going to happen around here. I was pretty stunned and pretty normal. It wasn't like we were in some beater car either. It was a relatively nice car. The car in front, I don't remember what it was because I think I was pretty shocked that he did that, but no real care for scratching it, no real care for denting it. And it was a gentle bump, but it was enough of a bump to know that you bumped him and the person getting bumped knew it as well. Pretty surprised there. And then on the highways there, lots of close passing, a lot of people going a lot faster than everybody else, and it was not terrifying, but it was a little bit nuts. I couldn't believe how aggressive it was there. And you'll find that maybe occasionally around here, but you're not going to find anybody that bumps somebody else. If somebody is at a stoplight and it turns green, usually 3, 4, 5 seconds is going to roll by before you hear a horn. And you'll hear a horn, and it's not just laying on the horn. Usually it's the friendly, I don't know if you could hear that or not, but friendly beep that, hey, look up, it's time to get going. You have to understand what they might be doing in that car. Maybe they're grabbing a cup for their kid in the back and weren't paying attention. Maybe they're looking at their phone for something and weren't paying attention. We've all been guilty of doing something like that, or they're picking something up off the floor, who knows? But obviously they're distracted and not looking at the red light. But that's usually about what you'll hear. Road rage, there's road rage out there, but most of the time it's just people yelling, shaking their fists, maybe a honk, something like that. But I think honestly it's fairly rare. Most of the drivers around Indianapolis are pretty average in their attitude. So as an example here, I'm going west on I-70. I'm actually going about 70 miles an hour, even though the speed limit at this part is 55, but I'm pretty much going the same speed as everybody else. So everybody's probably going a little faster than they should. Than when I get on I-465, which is that loop around Indianapolis. Speed limit's 55 there. But if you're going 55 miles an hour, then you are pretty obviously going slower than everybody else. And usually it's safer in traffic to be going the same speed as everybody else. When you're starting to go these different speeds, it creates a level of unpredictability that sometimes is hard to get past. So I would say maybe the driving is just a little bit faster, but I don't think that's very unusual across the entire country. Now, if you read comments on this video, you might say or see all kinds of negative comments about drivers in Indianapolis, but you know, usually we're hearing from the experts in a lot of those comments in there. Unbelievably sharp drivers, the sharpest of the bunch. So you'll also hear, oh, the drivers around here are the worst in the rain, or they're the worst in the snow. Now, we really don't get that much snow to worry about, but occasionally during the winter, we'll get some weather that you have to drive in. And I don't know what constitutes not knowing how to drive in the snow, but slowing down is knowing how to drive in the snow and the bad weather. And people that just fly through going by everybody they're slowing down, well, they're probably the ones that don't actually know how to drive safely through the snow. But we just don't get a tremendous amount of weather to worry about. Not like another driving story of mine. Quite a few years ago, I think it's back in 2017, we had some family in Colorado. We spent Christmas in Breckenridge, Colorado. We all flew into Denver, and there was a big winter storm coming, and we thought we can probably make it to our house out there, not our house, but the rental in Breckenridge before the storm hits. And if you're not familiar with that area of the country at all, you've never been there, Denver and Breckenridge, they're not that far apart. Breckenridge is up in the mountains, Denver's not. And it takes maybe 2 hours, probably less than that, depending on where you're coming from in Denver to get to Breckenridge. Not a bad drive at all. Down I-70, what I just got off of. I'm on 465 now. We did not beat the storm. It snowed more than 20 inches while we were on I-70 going up to Breckenridge. More than 20 inches. The wind was blowing 30, 40, and sometimes 50 miles an hour. They closed I-70 ahead of us, and they closed I-70 behind us. It was a complete nightmare. It took us about 7 hours to get to Breckenridge. Now, everybody there, I didn't care how they were driving as long as they stayed away from me, and they stayed away from us. At one point, probably an hour or so into that mess, maybe 2 hours into the mess, I can't remember, because we were traumatized by this, I had to get out and put chains on the tires. And I'm just a boy from Indiana. We don't put chains on tires here. You don't need to put chains on tires here. So, had to do that in all of that snow and that wind, and it was super cold at the time too. We had our 2 kids in the back at the time, 3 now, but 2 at that time, and wife up front, and we were worried. Very worried, and just wanting badly to get off of the road, and obviously taking our time, not going fast, putting the chains on just to get some grip and just to stay on the road. And there were some drivers that were honking here and there, but mostly everybody was on their own, making sure they were careful, not going too fast, and that's generally what it's like around here as well when we get some weather. That was just extreme. There was one time when I was pulled over, one moment, where a highway patrol officer pulled over, and I thought, oh, maybe he'll help me with these chains. He just got over and said, "You shouldn't be out here. What are you doing?" Like, well, I'm from Indiana. I've never put chains on tires before. We don't need them, and I'm trying to put these on, and believe me, we are trying to get out of here. So that was about the only piece of aggression that I got in that entire experience, and that was pretty bad. But around here, construction zones, you can see some of that through there too. Like I'm going north on 465 up to the northeast corner where I-69 connects to 465, and it can be kind of rough through there. Now, the time that I'm traveling right now, it's almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not that bad, but this evening it'll get worse, and in the morning, it's definitely, there's somebody just flying right by me. You maybe saw that on the camera. But everybody else, for the most part, we're all going about 65 miles an hour right now, and all together. Nobody really passing anybody, everybody's staying in their lanes. But this Yahoo just flew by me at probably 80 miles an hour, and now he's going as fast as everybody else because there's nowhere to go. Everybody's in here locked in. But the construction zones, that's, I guess, where you could maybe get some people who are upset with other people, but I think for the most part, everybody is in the same boat and they know it. So they're watching out for each other and making sure that they're not hitting anybody, they're not hitting cones, they're not hitting barrels, they're not being hit by somebody, and everybody's just trying to get through it generally. It's pretty rare going through a construction zone that I ever hear a horn. It's very rare. Even when it's super slowed down and stopped, it's usually not a bunch of horn blaring and angry people. Everybody's in the same boat, and I think everybody has that attitude. So, how are drivers in Indianapolis? All of those things and those stories, just comparing driving back to here, I'd say the attitude here is just really pretty average. If you're from a small farming town, way out, nowhere close to really anything in Indiana, or out in Nebraska or something like that, then this may be a bit much. And people might seem a little bit more aggressive to you. But if you're from New York or Miami or Argentina, I mean, they are way more aggressive than what you're going to find here. And so it may be dialed back for you. But amazingly, I get that question a lot. And it's hard for me to say exactly how everything is here because it just doesn't seem that bad to me. And the drivers and the attitudes, just aside from some of the one-offs here and there. But for the most part, pretty average. So if you have questions about driving, traffic, living in Indianapolis, or living in any of the cities and towns that surround Indianapolis, then make sure that you reach out. We'll certainly have your back with those questions, and we'll absolutely have your back when it comes time for you to make your move anywhere in the Indy Metro. We'll catch you in the next one.